He didn't just break my heart. He broke the version of me that believed love could save anyone. And the cruelest part? He did it with a smile, the same smile that once made me believe I was safe. People talk about heartbreak like it's a storm loud, chaotic, full of thunder and screaming skies. But mine wasn't like that. Mine was silent, like a slow poison. The kind that doesn't kill you all at once, it just lives inside you. It's quietly, until one day, you wake up and realize you don't recognize the person in the mirror anymore. That's what he did to me. And this. This is the story of how I took that broken girl he left behind and turned her into the kind of woman he could never hurt again. The kind of woman who became her own revenge. Before I tell you everything, before I take you through the love, the betrayal, the silence, and the quiet fire that changed me, I want you to do something if you've ever trusted someone who tore you apart. If you've ever stayed when you should have walked away, then stay with me till the very end of this story, because you're about to see what heartbreak can become when it meets strength. So please, like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and stay with me till the last word. Because this isn't just a story about revenge. It's about rebirth. Now, let's begin. I met him when I wasn't looking for anything. Not love, not attention, just peace. My life back then was simple. I had a small apartment with peeling paint on the walls, a job that paid the bills but never filled my soul, and a quiet routine that felt more like survival than living. And yet, I was okay with it. Because peace, even lonely peace, was better than chaos. But he came like warmth in winter, unexpected, gentle, and dangerous in ways I didn't yet understand. It was a Friday evening. I remember it clearly because I almost didn't go out that night. There was a little cafe I loved, dim lights, old music, a place that smelled like nostalgia and coffee beans. I used to sit in the corner with my notebook, pretending to write, mostly watching strangers pass by. And then he walked in. He didn't look like the kind of man who would ruin a life. He had that calm kind of face, the kind that made you feel safe just by looking at him. A navy blue sweater, messy hair, a book in his hand. He ordered black coffee and sat across from me. And then, when our eyes met, he smiled. Not the usual kind of smile. This one lingered, as if he already knew I'd remember it forever. He approached me later when I was about to leave. He said something about the book I was pretending to read. And we talked about nothing and somehow about everything. He told me his name was Ion, and when he laughed, I realized how long it had been since I'd laughed too. That night, he texted me before I even got home. I don't know why, he wrote, but you feel like someone I've been looking for. That's how it started. The late night messages that turned into calls. It's the calls that turned into plans. Stu? And the plans that turned into something dangerously close to love. He made me feel visible again, like I mattered. Like the parts of me I had buried, my laughter, my dreams, my softness, were worth uncovering. And for a while, I let him. I let him see every version of me I had hidden from the world. He used to tell me I was too good for him. I'd laugh it off, thinking it was his way of being humble. But now I know sometimes people say that not because they mean it, but because they already know they'll hurt you. I remember the night he promised me forever. It was raining, not heavily, just a quiet drizzle that made the streetlights look like blurred memories. We stood outside his apartment, both of us drenched and laughing. And he said, "No matter what happens, I'll never leave you. I promise." The kind of line you only hear in movies. But when he said it, I believed him. Because in that moment, love felt unbreakable. And I thought, maybe I had finally found my forever. But promises, they don't break all at once. They fade, quietly, like color leaving a photograph, until one day, all you have left is a memory of what it used to be. At first, it was small things. He stopped texting good morning. He got busy, then distant. His laughter turned shorter, his eyes colder. And when I asked him what was wrong, he smiled and said, "You're overthinking again." I believed him because when you love someone, you want to believe them, even when your heart is screaming that something's wrong. Days turned into weeks. The silence between us grew thicker. And slowly, the man who once promised me forever began to disappear in front of me. There's something terrifying about watching love die while it's still standing in front of you. It's like watching the sun set while pretending the sky is still bright. One night, he didn't come home, and that's when everything changed. The night he didn't come home, the world outside was quiet, painfully quiet. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting the amber streetlights like broken glass. I remember sitting by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, each one feeling like a second passing without him. I told myself maybe his phone died. Maybe he was with a friend. Maybe he just needed space. It's strange how we lie to ourselves so easily when the truth is already whispering inside us. He came home at dawn. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. I asked him where he'd been. He didn't look at me. He just said I needed to clear my head. And that was the moment, that tiny, cold moment when I knew something between us had died. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a candle that runs out of wax. For days after that, I tried to hold on. I texted him good morning. He left me unseen. I cooked his favorite food. He barely touched it. I tried to talk to fix whatever was breaking between us. But he'd change the subject, laugh it off, or say he was tired. I was losing him, and worse, I was losing myself trying to keep him. One evening, he came home later than usual. He smelled different, not like his cologne, but like something softer, sweeter, unfamiliar. When I asked where he'd been, he said, just work. But I knew. A woman always knows. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I stared at him in the dark. His face looked peaceful, innocent, almost beautiful. And I hated that I still loved him in that moment. I hated that my heart still beat for someone who had already stopped choosing me. I cried silently because when you love someone who's already left emotionally, your tears become the only proof that the love ever existed. The next morning, I went through his phone. Not because I wanted to find something, but because I already knew I would. And I did. Her name was Sana. Their messages were everything he used to say to me. The jokes, the nicknames, the way he told her she made him feel alive again. I read until my hands started shaking. And when I saw the photo, the two of them smiling, his arm around her like it used to be around me, something inside me cracked. Not just my heart. Something deeper. The kind of crack that changes the sound of your soul forever. He woke up and saw me holding his phone. There was a long silence, the kind that doesn't need words. And all he said was, "You weren't supposed to see that." That was his first response. Not an apology, not regret, just irritation that I had caught him. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insane how small I had become trying to keep his love. He tried to explain, to twist it into something temporary, but it didn't matter anymore. Every lie he spoke only built a higher wall between us. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just said, "You broke your promise." He looked at me, blank, and said, "People change." That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't take much, just clothes, a book, and my dignity, which I had buried under months of denial. As I walked out, he didn't stop me. He didn't even ask where I was going. He just stood there, silent, letting me go like I had never mattered at all. And that was the part that hurt the most. Not that he cheated, but that he didn't even fight for me. The days that followed felt like living inside a slow-motion movie. Everything was quiet, colorless, heavy. I moved into a small apartment, barely furnished a bed, a kettle, and silence for company. And silence. Silence can be the loudest thing in the world. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reaching for him, then remembering he wasn't there anymore. My chest would ache, not physically, but in a way that made breathing feel like work. I stopped eating. I stopped talking. I just existed. Grief is strange. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves, some gentle, some violent. Some days you think you're okay. Other days you find yourself crying over a song, a scent, a memory that suddenly appears out of nowhere. I tried to hate him. I really did. But hating someone you once loved feels like burning your own skin. It hurts you more than it hurts them. So instead, I just went numb. Weeks passed. Then months. I started going on long walks after work. At first, I did it to escape my thoughts. But slowly, those walks became something else, a conversation with myself. I began to notice the world again, the sound of birds, the smell of rain, the way sunlight hit my face through the trees. It felt like life was whispering, "You're still here. You survived." I started painting again, something I had stopped years ago because he once said, "You're wasting your time with that." I remember sitting by the window, painting for hours, not because I was good at it, but because it made me feel like I was rebuilding something invisible inside me. Then one day I saw him again. By accident, I was at a cafe downtown, not our old one, a new one. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through my phone when I heard his voice. That same voice I once thought I could never live without. I looked up, and there he was. With her, she looked younger, happier, and he looked exactly the same, as if the months of my pain had meant nothing. For a moment, time froze. My heart didn't race. My eyes didn't tear. I just watched them laugh, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt distant, detached, almost free. He saw me too. Our eyes met just for a second. And in that second, something flickered in his face. Maybe guilt. Maybe confusion. Maybe the faint realization of what he'd lost. He looked away first. I smiled a small, quiet smile, because I knew. He'd never expected to see me standing there, not broken, not begging, but whole. That night, went home and deleted his number. No tears, no drama. Just silence, the same silence he once gave me. Except this time, it was mine. My silence, my choice. And that's when my revenge began. Not with anger, not with payback, but with becoming everything he thought I'd never be. I started working harder, long hours, new projects, late nights, not to prove something to him, but to prove something to myself, that I was capable of building a life that didn't revolve around anyone else's promises. I got promoted a few months later. My art started selling online. People began to notice me not as someone's girlfriend, not as someone's leftover, but as me. Every step forward felt like a quiet act of rebellion. Every smile, every morning I woke up without crying, felt like a victory. You'd never understand. But here's the thing about life. It always circles back. And sometimes it brings the people who broke you just to show how much you've grown. Because a year later, he came back. A year later, on a quiet autumn afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but some old instinct made me open it. It said, "Hi, I've been thinking about you lately. Can we talk?" I didn't need to ask who it was. Some ghosts don't need names. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time I felt absolutely nothing. No pain, no longing. Just peace. I didn't reply that day. But later that week, I ran into him again, this time completely by chance. It was in a bookstore. I was in the art section looking for something new to paint when I heard someone call my name. That voice, soft, familiar, almost hesitant. I turned, and there he was. He looked different. Older, tired, like the years had taken something from him that he couldn't get back. He smiled nervously, the kind of smile that used to melt me. But this time, it didn't. He said, "You look good." And I said, "I am." There was a pause. One of those heavy silences where both people are remembering the same things, but for completely different reasons. He asked if I wanted to grab a coffee. For a moment, I thought about saying no. But something inside me, curiosity, maybe closure, made me say yes. We sat across from each other at a small cafe, the same way we used to. But this time, it felt like we were two strangers playing a memory that didn't belong to us anymore. He talked about his life, how things had changed, how work had been stressful, how he wasn't with her anymore. He said it casually, but his eyes lingered on mine, as if waiting for a reaction. I didn't give him one. I just nodded, stirring my coffee slowly. He sighed. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me," he said softly. and for a moment, I could almost see the man I once loved. But the difference was, I wasn't the woman who needed his love anymore. I said, "You promised you'd never leave me." He looked down. "I know," he whispered, "and I hate myself for that." I smiled, gently. "You don't have to hate yourself. You just have to live with what you lost." There was no anger in my voice, no bitterness, just truth, the kind that lands quietly but cuts deep. He nodded, his eyes glistening, and I realized this was my revenge. Not in seeing him hurt, but in knowing I didn't need his apology anymore. When we left the cafe, he walked beside me, slower than before. There was this sadness around him, the kind that comes when someone realizes too late what they destroyed. At the corner, he stopped and said, "Can I call you sometime?" I looked at him, and for a brief second, I remembered every version of us, the laughter, the nights, the promise under the rain. But that girl who once needed him, she didn't live in me anymore, so I said, "No, you can't." He looked surprised, maybe even hurt, but I wasn't cruel. I smiled and added, "Take care of yourself, Ayan." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't look back this time. And that, I think, is the real meaning of moving on, not when you stop loving someone, but when you stop looking back to see if they're watching you leave. After that day, my life didn't suddenly become perfect. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a slow, uneven climb. Some nights I still thought about him. Not with longing, just with quiet acceptance. Like looking at an old photograph. Something that once meant everything, but now just tells you how far you've come. I focused on my art, on my work, on myself. And one day I woke up and realized I was happy. Not the kind of happy that depends on someone else's love, but the kind that grows quietly inside you. Like sunlight finding its way through broken glass. My paintings started gaining attention. People reached out to buy them, to feature them in exhibitions. My name started appearing in places I'd never imagined. And each time it did, I thought of that girl sitting in the dark, crying over a man who said she'd never make it without him. And I whispered to her, "Look at you now." That became my revenge, not by ruining his life, but by rebuilding mine so beautifully that he'd have to live knowing he once had a place in it, and lost it. Months later, I heard from a mutual friend that he wasn't doing well. He'd lost his job, struggled with depression, and spent most of his time alone. I didn't feel joy hearing it, just a quiet sadness. Because I knew what that loneliness felt like. But I also knew that pain is a teacher. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally learning what love really means. Sometimes, I wonder if he ever thinks about me, not the version of me he broke, but the woman I became after him. I think he does. Because heartbreak leaves fingerprints on both sides, but I don't think about revenge anymore. I think about peace, about growth, about how love, even when it ends, still teaches you how to find yourself again. Because the truth is, he didn't destroy me. He just showed me the parts of myself I had forgotten existed. And for that, in some twisted way, I'm grateful. Now, when it rains like that night under the streetlight, I sometimes stand by the window and let the drops hit the glass. I close my eyes and I don't remember the promise he broke. I remember the promise I made to myself the night I walked away that I would never beg to be loved again. That promise. I never broke. So if you're listening to this right now, if someone shattered you, left you questioning your worth, remember this: you don't need to destroy them to heal. Just build yourself into someone they'll never deserve again. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply becoming untouchable.